our calendar now is $1. Now you're probably thinking, okay, this is silly. It's October tomorrow. However, the pictures and the history that you learn that's inside the calendars are very valuable. So if you don't have a calendar, come on up and maybe purchase one and take a look at the history that we put in here of Bridgeville. And exciting, we have new shirts. So we were working hard over the summer. One is the London, Paris, Rome, Bridgeville. We have a hoodie, a sweatshirt, or a t-shirt. And we have some other new t-shirts. Whoops. Pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. So over at our table, you're welcome afterwards to take a peek and maybe purchase some items. We still have our books of the different towns. We have nuts that are very, very good, very famous. These are the Aloha nuts. They're very good. Anyway. Yeah. What we have coming up is October 16th and 17th, we're having our bake sale. It's held at the History Center, and it's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So if you'd like to make some goodies, you'd like to bring some in for us, you can contact us at the History Center, or just come on in and purchase. We get a lot of good stuff. So that's October 16th and 17th. Okay, so I'm excited. We're going to learn about the railroads. This is Jim. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and we're going to go on with our program. Thank you, Jim.
Check 1, 2. Everybody hear me okay? Good? All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Weinschenker, and tonight we're going to learn about the Waynesburg and Washington Railroad. I've been writing, researching, working on the railroad for probably almost 30 years now, and done a lot of presentations. So tonight we're going to go down the right-of-way from Washington to Waynesburg. And speaking of history, just grab both books, or all three, I should say. Currently, there are 3 books on the Waynesburg and Washington Railroad. The first one is called 3 Feet on the Panhandle. This was published in 1983 by my good friends Larry Kohler and the late Morgan Gabert. This is the definitive corporate history of the railroad. They had about 300 pictures and a lot of information that they gleaned from the Waynesburg station attic, a lot of paper. Invoices, timetables, you name it, paper, it was there. That's how they wrote 3 Feet on the Panhandle. I came through in 2003. I found probably well over 100 pictures that were not in 3 feet. And we basically just did like a picture book, if you look through this, of the unpublished photographs. And then in 2014, I authored the life and times of locomotive number 4. That's the only existing locomotive from the Waynesburg and Washington Railroad. It's currently housed at the Greene County Historical Society. So this was done in 2014, so everything is current up through 2014. I do have a stack of the books over there for sale on the locomotive. This book is extremely hard to find. We did about 1,500 copies. Sometimes you can find them on eBay. They pop up on 8 books. Same with 3 Feet on the Panhandle. They're more prevalent on eBay than anywhere else, but they're out there. And if you put the 2 together, you get a pretty good history of the railroad. So with that, my lovely wife Mary up there, she's going to be our clicker tonight. So let's go to the first slide. And if I'm in somebody's way, just yell at me. Go ahead. Okay, let's look at a couple bullet points here. The railroad was chartered May 18th, 1875, and they started in Washington. The first plank was driven May of 1877, and later on that year, November of 1877, in West Waynesburg. If you know where West Waynesburg is, That's where the first depot was, so they stopped at West Waynesburg. In 1885, the Pennsylvania Railroad purchased the line. In Washington, there's the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad and the Pennsylvania Railroad. The W&W used a Y trestle on the B&O to turn their locomotives because at that time they did not have a turntable. So when the W&W became very prevalent and profitable, there was a fight for the railroad between the B&O and the Pennsylvania Railroad, and the Pennsylvania Railroad won out and purchased the line. Last passenger train was July 9th, 1929. Last freight steam service was April 6, 1933. After 1933, they ran Fairmont speeders, little speeders on the line to keep the line open, and we'll get into that later on. And in 1978, a West Virginia scrapyard scrapped the ties and the rails. Today, and I'll point out throughout the presentation, today you can follow the railroad from Washington to Waynesburg. It's best in the wintertime. It really stands out, and it's very easy to see in the 28 miles. Okay, some facts. It was a narrow gauge railroad, meaning 3 feet between the rails. Why was it 3 feet? We all live around here. We know the hills, the valleys. Narrow gauge equipment is lighter, more nimble than standard gauge equipment, so they chose 3 feet for the gauge. Light locomotives, small boxcars, small equipment, lots of curves, lots of bridges. 28 miles in length, 174 curves. Coming out of Washington, the steepest grade is 2.88%, and most of the grades on the 2 major hills, 2.5%. 10 major stations, over 30 bridges, and then in 1944, the railroad was standard gauged. Everybody knew that coal had to come out of Greene County, and the best way to move coal was by rail. So the only railroad at the time, before the Monongahela came in, was the W&W. So they were going to standard gauge the W&W, straighten out the 174 curves, and then the Pennsy was going to bring coal out. Well, the Monongahela came in and achieved what the Pennsylvania Railroad wanted to do. So that's a whole other story about standard gauging. But it did happen. Okay. You have a battery, Lisa?
Push the button on the side.
Hello? Okay, we're back. Okay. This, I think your battery crapped out.
I'll text. I'll text for you. I didn't know.
Yeah.
It stays on about 3 seconds.
Is any of the railroad a bike trail?
No, sir. No bike trail. No, has not gone to rails to trails yet. Where's Lisa's little funky unit?
Want my little one?
Yeah, I'll take your edge back. You don't mind. Oh, let's try. Okay.
Technical difficulty, it's okay, eat your snacks.
Oh, yeah, we have full battery. All right. Okay, we're back. Okay, this is a map of the railroad, and it does run pretty much compass north to south from Waynesburg at the lower part of the map all the way up to that, see that circle to the top to Washington. It is in Greene County and Washington County, so pretty much it's half and half. Okay, next one. So this is the main line profile. As you can see, the 2 major grades on the right-hand side of the profile is Washington. As soon as you come out of where Judson Wiley is, if everybody knows where the concrete company is, that is the South Main Station. coming right out of there up to Wade siding is the steepest part of the railroad. Then we come down to the valley, we climb the hill again to West Union, and then we come down to about 930 some odd feet to Waynesburg. So they were climbing two major grades back and forth from Waynesburg to Washington. All right, milepost 0. This is South Main Station. This was the second station in Washington. The first one was a small wooden structure. Then as the railroad grew, the Pennsylvania Railroad realized that they needed a bigger station. So they called on their favorite architects from Philadelphia to design this brick station. And this station was constructed right around 1902, 1903. What's interesting here in this situation is since the W&W had a close relationship with the Pennsylvania Railroad, only passenger service was conducted here. If you know where the Pennsylvania Railroad brick freight station is on Chestnut Street, the W&W operated their freight operations out on from the Chestnut Street freight station. So this was passenger only. And both standard gauge and narrow gauge trains came into this station. We'll illustrate that later. Oh, there it is right there. Okay, so we're looking at the station. On the right-hand side, the Pennsylvania Railroad standard gauge always had the inside track. Every pictures that we have within the collection, the PRR is on the inside track because they were the big brother. The W&W was always on the outside of the track. On the left-hand side, kind of in the shadows, was Charles Roosh grain coal. There's a coal tipple there, standard gauge coal tipple that the PRR would bring in coal hoppers past the station, push them up the ramp on the trestle, they'll dump coal there. Okay, next one. Okay, this is actually it's July 9th, 1929. This is the last day of passenger service. But the point being is, this is South Main Street. You can see the standard gauge Pennsylvania Railroad locomotive on the left. On the right is W&W second, 9681. Have a flagman in the middle of the intersection, guarding, crossing, so the locomotive and consist could go up to Washington Yard, get serviced, be spun on the turntable, and come back out and head to Waynesburg. This shows the track configuration of Washington Station. On the right-hand side, you can see the long umbrella platform, about 155 feet of platform. As you can see, there's 3 rails there. The 2 inside rails is 3 feet between the rails, so that's narrow gauge. The 2 outside rails is standard gauge, so that's 4 8.5. This is, what's the locomotive number? Is it 4? Can't see. Is that number 4, Zach? I think it is. Yeah, I think that's number 4, the one that's down at the museum. But this again would be in the late June, July of 1929. They went from 4 cars in their passenger consist to 2 cars in their passenger consist. So this short passenger train is being prepared to head back to Waynesburg, south of Waynesburg. Yeah. So this is second number 4. Okay, next. You got some mad
I'm going to
computers
explain
going.
those rails again.
Okay,
The two that are farthest apart, that's the standard gauge,
that is correct.
and then the 2 on the right are the narrow gauge.
Correct. The center rail and the one on the right is your 3 feet. That's your narrow gauge. Because that put the consist closest to the platform. Okay, next. Next. All right. So after the W&W was done with South Main Street Station and the Chartiers branch, which everybody knows runs right here, the station, your station, is part of the Chartiers branch, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Chicago, and St. Louis. When the last passenger consist on the Chartiers branch came out in '53, the station was leased to this feed company. Well, in May of 1960, I do believe, there was a major fire, as you can see. Complete devastation, took the roof off, but the structure survived. It'll come back. But the structure survived. They put a new roof on it, and if you go down there today and you walk along the passenger side of the platform and you look up in the beams, they're still charred. You can see the heavy charring on those big oak beams. So as I noted before, that the Waynesburg and Washington Railroad shared engine facilities with the Pennsylvania Railroad. So this is the Washington engine facilities. This is a much later day photo. As you can see, it's all standard gauge now. There's no three rail. So that was Washington Engine House. This is the Washington Yard facilities. We're back in the three rail day. The turntable was dual gauge, so they could spin the locomotives and service them. Water tower, there was a coal hoist, there was a sand hoist. All the facilities there that the W&W paid for services there. We do have information where they paid for, X number of dollars for a ton of coal. They paid for so much water, so on and so forth. So even though they were under the PRR, they paid for services to use Washington Yard. Okay, so we passed the station, we climbed the hill, crossed Wade Siding, going alongside Prospect Avenue, and we come to the highest and longest trestle on the railroad, which is Elm Street Trestle. This photograph is from the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie photo collection. In the 30s, the P&LE wanted to buy the railroad from the Pennsylvania Railroad and be the railroad to haul coal out of Greene County. So they sent their corporate photographer up and down the line to take a picture of everything that was still remaining on the W&W. So we have a collection of pictures from the mid-30s of the corporate photographer of these various locations. And when I found this collection, I put it in my book. And some of the photographs here, we never knew what the area looked like until this collection came to light. So it's a very important collection, very important. So the gentlemen here are showing you that this is a 3-foot narrow gauge railroad. The two outer rails are narrow gauge. That center rail is a guard gauge, or guardrail, meaning that if something derailed, the flanges, either on the locomotive or the rolling stock, would catch between those two rails and keep it from tipping off the trestle there. I think, go to the next one. Yep, okay. It's been a while since I've done this, but I can remember. So in 1944, when the railroad was standard gauge, most of the large trestles were filled in, meaning that they would just dump piles and piles and hopper loads of cinders over the trestle to fill it in to trestle level. So if you go out to Elm Street, between Elm Street and Murray Street, you see this big, long, curved fill across the valley. Well, the Elm Street trestle was under all of those cinders. The trestle's still there. Okay, crossing Murray Avenue, the next bridge that we come to is Rural Avenue Trestle, named for being on Rural Avenue. This is the only photograph we have of this trestle, and this was another one that was filled in. Go up to Rural Avenue, look back towards Elm Street. You see this long curved fill, and the trestle was still under the fill. All right, climbing the hill up to Paul's Acres. We're up on Sanitarium Road in Pancake. Everybody knows where Pancake is. On the Paul Farm, there was a trestle there, where across Paul Farm, it kind of zigzagged its way and headed on to Braddock. So this is one of the trestles. So we hit the first shelter station, and what I mean by shelter station is a configuration like this. Like I said, there were 10 major stations where there was some type of agent, either a ticket agent or a combination ticket agent, freight agent. All of the other shelters, we consider them flag stops, even though they were official on the timetable, they would stop there. But you can look at these at flag stops. So this is, go back. There you go. So this is at Braddock off of Sanitarium Road. So we have a standard Pennsy shelter station, and to the right is a standard Pennsylvania Railroad tool shed. The railroad was divided into 6 sections. Each section had their own tool shed. So they had a hand pump speeder car there. They had all the tools to work on the track. So they had section foremen and laborers assigned to each section on the railroad. And every day they would go up and down their section, their 4, 5, 6 miles, and they would maintain the railroad. So that's a standard Pennsy tool house. This is probably a 1910s photograph, really an early photograph of Braddock Station. At the flag stops, as you can see in the foreground here, is a cinder platform. So they would build up the platform to passenger car step height, and it would be 2 passenger cars long. WW passenger cars were about 45 feet long, so we're in the 80 to 90 feet long cinder platform, and they were at the shelter stations to help people get off the passenger cars safely to the station. So this is an important photograph because this is in pristine condition. Later on, as the railroad was winding down and even into post-abandonment, we don't have any records of when or why the tool shed was moved away north from the Braddock station there. If you look on the side, I know it's hard to see, but I'll show you a clearer picture. But later on, when the telegraphs came in, they had telephone and telegraph service on the line. Each station was assigned a 2-letter telegraph location, so Braddock was BO. And when we get to Vankirk, you can clearly see the VN on the sign. All right, so we're coming on to Bottom Trestle. This is the only place where the railroad in the 28 miles crosses the highway. There were 3 places where the highway crossed the railroad, but Bottom Trestle is the only bridge that traversed a highway. Again, this is from the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie photograph collection. The photographer is standing on one of the abutments looking across the trestle. You can see how it curves from north to south. So on the top of the photograph, we're coming from Braddock, crossing the trestle, and getting ready to climb the hill to West Union towards Waynesburg. So in March of 1982-ish, PennDOT was tired of getting complaints of the trestle being hit by mostly buses. Because if you come down that road, it zigzags, it's an S shape through the trestle. Buses were getting stuck between the trestle bends. So March of 1982, they cut the center out and left a north side and the south side. So this is the south side of Bottom Trestle, and this is the north side of Bottom Trestle. So when you're zigzagging down that road and you come to the bottom of the hill, you have these 2 pieces of trestle on either side of the highway.
They're still there today?
Yes, sir. Yes, they are still there. Yeah, the southern terminus is in the gentleman's backyard. He stacks his firewood between the bends. Okay, so we're getting ready to climb the hill, Mount Wheeler. If anybody is familiar with Mount Wheeler in Washington County, if you're going down 79 or coming up 79 from the south, you look up to the left there, and you see a bunch of radio towers on a big tall hill. Well, the W&W went around that. So if you remember that they had to pull a major hill from Washington Station up to Mount Wheeler, well, they needed 2 locomotives on freight. So what they would do is they would break the consist in half in Washington, 2 locomotives called double heading. They would pull the freight up to Summit Siding. There was a long siding there. They would park that part of the boxcars on that siding, go back down to Washington, pull up the second half of the consist, put them together, and then 1 locomotive was able to take all of the boxcars into Waynesburg. So Summit Siding had a little telephone booth there. When they get to the top, they would either telegraph or telephone back down and say, hey, we're up here, we're getting ready to head to Washington or Waynesburg, so on and so forth. But the hill was so steep that 1 locomotive could not pull an entire train up. They had to double head. So we had the opportunity a couple years ago. We were diddy-bopping around Washington with some very nice friends, people that we met. He says, hey, you want to go up on Summit Siding? I'm like, sure, are we allowed? He goes, oh, it's my friend's property. I just got to give him a quick call. So we're in his 4-wheel drive truck, and we were actually on the right-of-way going up Summit Siding. There's still some, if we could, but there, if you look right in the middle there, kind of where Mary has the cursor, there's a tie. So we're bouncing down through Summit Siding. There were still some ties there. They were probably 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. So it's pretty cool. Okay, next one. All right, so we have circled around Mount Wheeler. We're coming back down from Mount Wheeler, and we hit the next shelter station, which is Judge Chambers. And yes, there was a Judge Chambers because he lived directly across the street from where the station is located. So how it got its name is when the railroad was coming in the mid-70s, as they were acquiring property and buying property off of the farmers and landowners and so forth, they approached Judge Chambers, who was a very prominent judge in Washington at the courthouse. So he said, Judge Chambers, we'd like to buy your property for the railroad. He goes, absolutely not. And they're like, but this is the right-of-way, the best right-of-way. He says, well, I will do this. If you give me a lifetime pass in my own station, I will give you the property. And they're like, oh, okay. So they built Judge Chambers his own station. So what he'd do is he'd walk across the street, wait for the train, hop on the passenger train, take him to Washington, go do his judgeship, get back on the train, head up the hill and go home. So that's how it got named Judge Chambers Station. So we would find this photograph, Sam and Mag Hazlitt at Judge Chambers Station. This is a few dates between the last day of passenger service, July 4th, 1929. So either they were going to a picnic or some type of family event, but I don't think many people dress up like that to ride the train today. Most people look like they're going to Walmart with their slippers and their, riding T-shirt and their pajamas. But Mr. and Mrs. Hazlitt there, they were dressed to the nines going somewhere on July 4th. All right. So we're weaving our way on the side of the hill. We come into Vankirk Station. This was another shelter station, as you can see by the little white dot in the middle there. It's really hard to see on the right-hand side, but this is Vankirk Overhead. This is one of 3 spots where the highway crossed over the railroad. What's important about this photograph, what it tells us, is this is a typical passenger consist. So the W&W 99.9% of the times would run 4 cars on their passenger trains. 3 coaches and 1 head-end car, which is either a combine, which means it was a combination baggage and passenger, or a full combine or a full baggage, which was all baggage. So on this one, the baggage, the head-end car is on the back, so that means it was going to Washington. If the head-end car is behind the locomotive, it's going to Waynesburg 99.9% of the time from what we can glean from the photographs. So this is a pretty important photograph. Okay? So here's a close-up of Van Kirk overhead. Braddock had an overhead, Van Kirk had an overhead, and West Union on the Washington County, Greene County line had an overhead, and all three were exactly the same. All right, so we're coming down the hill a little bit, and we're now upon Chambers Dam. This was a very popular summer excursion spot within Washington County, and the railroad served Chambers Dam many times throughout the summer, each and every summer. Special excursions, picnics, dances, July 4th festival, so on and so forth. We have posters, small posters, July 4th excursion to Chambers Dam, WW all-inclusive ticket. This is a P&LE photograph showing that the shelter station was built on the lake itself. Why they didn't put it on the other side, I have no clue. We haven't figured that out. So you put pilings in the water and you put the station over the water. But there was a very long siding here used for box car storage and rolling stock storage. Go ahead.
What was the waterway dam down?
What's that?
There was a dam on a stream there?
Yes.
What was it? What stream? I'm curious. 10 Mile Creek.
I don't think it's 10 Mile. It's right around Baintown, so whatever it is in Baintown. Maybe Bain Creek? I think it's Bain.
It's
Yeah,
a
Bain
dam
Creek.
upstream.
So this, I got this series of photographs from a friend of mine. He always looks out for me. He's a huge antique collector. He's in antique stores all the time. He called me up one day and goes, "Jim," I'm like, "Bryce, what's up?" He goes, "Man, I got some good photographs for you." I'm like, "Okay." So he bought this family album because he recognized some of these photos from the railroad. And went down to his house, took a look at them, and we gleaned some of this out of some of these photographs out of that album. But what is it, July 13th, 1914? Yeah, July 13th, 1914, on the lake, Chambers Dam. So you can see they had a high platform, dive platform, all the bathers in the water, the swimmers and whatnot. But what's important, and I know it's very hard to see, but look at the upper left-hand corner photograph to the right at the bottom of the high dive platform. That little white blob is the back of Chambers Dam Station. So we're all into history here. We all love to look at photographs. So if anything that you learn about historical research, any photograph you get, whatever's in the foreground, ignore it unless it's obvious. Look in the background and you can pick out some really good information. And this is one of the only series of photographs we have of Chambers Mill Station in service. That P&LE photograph from 38, the railroad was done. This is actually in service. Okay, go ahead. So we were out diddy-bopping around one day, and I just threw this in to show that the current dance hall, the red roof building in the back, and right where that tree is tipped over, that's where the station was located. As you can see, it's on this, the right-of-way is on this long curve right alongside the lake.
Is that lake still there?
Yes, it is a private development. When you cross the road to go in, you actually cross the right-of-way, there's big signs. It's Chambers Dam, something development. There are private homes there. Yes, it's
Is that Green or Washington?
Washington, because we're not in West Union yet. Yeah, it's Washington. So down in the middle of nowhere, on the other side of Chambers Dam, is McCracken Station, and I do mean this is in the middle of nowhere. We have no clue why there was a station there. There's just nothing around. Just absolutely nothing around. But again, it's on that side of the right-of-way, and they had to drive uprights into the ground to put the station on. Why they didn't put it on the other side, I don't know. Okay? Okay, so we come to one of our major stations. We're on Banktown Road, just crossed Baker's Bridge, and we're at milepost 9. So there were a couple stations that similar to Baker Station. First of all, for all of you fast food aficionados, see the BK on the station's sign right there? This was the first Burger King in Washington County. So actually, no, if you remember, that's the Telegraph designation for BK, for Baker Station. But it was a story-and-a-half station. This side closest to me would be the passenger waiting area and the ticketing area. And on the other side, there would be a big freight door for freights. So in the early days, this would be manned by a ticket agent. Okay? So Baker Station, you have another one of those Pennsylvania Railroad tool houses in the background. And you can see a switch right here. It was a runaround to the back of the station and the tool shed. Okay, one of the other bridges is Condit's Crossing. It's the second smallest bridge. It's about 13 feet long and probably about 10 feet wide, and it just traverses a small stream. On the other side of the farm driveway was Condit's Crossing Station. That would have been a shelter station that would have served this area. There you go. And after 125, since this is 2025, the bridge is still there. It's well over 125 years old. The abutments are cut and placed stone that are still intact. Had a flag stop. This is a literal flag stop. There was never a shelter station as far as we know. People would just stand by the road and flag down the train if they lived in the Llewellyn area. So notice the car on the left-hand side of the photograph. That's the P&L corporate photographer's car. That shows up in this series of photographs like nobody's business. It's everywhere. Next one is Mount Herman flag stop. There was a shelter station here, but we do not have any photographs of that. We know that there was an actual physical structure from the information that was gleaned from the Waynesburg station. But matching up the maps and looking at the modern configuration, this road and hillside has been all moved. We were down there 2 winters ago, and we were matching up photographs to this, and nothing matched. And we determined that the road was moved. On the left-hand side, there was a covered bridge. That's just now a regular highway bridge. So somewhere along the line, the township decided to move the road. Okay, similar to Baker Station, you can see a similarity here. Was another major station, West Amity at milepost 12. Story-and-a-half, freight on one side, ticketing on the other side. That is Bridge 19 on the main line. There were 2 bridges here over this small stream. Bridge 19, which we're looking at here, and Bridge 19.5, which carried the siding across the stream. So there was a long siding on the left-hand side of the photograph. So when the railroad was done, the local farmer up the street said, "Hey, what are you going to do with that station?" And they're like, "Probably tear it down, burn it down." He says, "Can I have it?" I said, "Sure, if you can move it." He says, "No problem." So somehow, some way, probably in the late 40s, maybe early 50s, that the station, the West Amity station, was moved to a local farm about a quarter mile up this farmway. So it's well taken care of. We were inside of it, pretty neat. I was doing a right-of-way tour way back in the day for the Amwell Township Historical Society. And this is a good close-up. On the left-hand side, you see the big freight door. On the right-hand side is the passenger ticketing and waiting. Okay, we back. Okay, passenger ticketing, and I'm pointing to a mail slot. There was a slot cut in the siding on the freight side where people could drop their mail. Yes, sir. This is West Amity Station.
This is still West Avenue. Okay. We're losing battery again.
Alrighty. Okay, we'll get your new battery.
Okay, I'll keep on. Go ahead. All right. So we're halfway-ish on the 28 miles. We're at Hackney Station area. There were two major depots, and this was the first depot. This picture here is not the first depot. This is the second one. There was the first depot on the line where trains would meet halfway from Waynesburg to Washington. There was a long siding here. They would meet here and go their respective ways, and there was a depot. We have no photographs of that. This is the second Hackney depot in its first configuration. So go ahead. So as the railroad grew, so did the traffic, passenger and freight. So the WW determined that they needed more freight storage area, so they added this wing on this side of the station. So go back. You can see the HY. Start to notice on these stations. Okay, yeah. Hello. Oh, okay, we're still good. If you notice, the HY is the telegraph marking. Okay, go ahead. And pretty busy photo. Hackney in its heyday. You can see that the locomotive is on the main line. You had a middle platform to get off the train and go over to the station, the siding up next to the station, pile of coal. I mean, there's so much going on in this photograph. But if you see the white blob on the left-hand side of the locomotive, the WW did have a mail contract with the United States Postal Service, and they would pick up mail on the fly. So let's think about this for a second. So you have a station a mile, almost every mile, going up and down hills. Average speed on the passenger trains, probably 10 to 12 miles an hour, and you're picking up mail on the fly. Because usually when you see mail being picked up on a fly, you know, some consist is flying down the right of way about 100 miles an hour, and the arm goes out, and they pick up a mail bag. But with the WW, the locomotive, they would not stop. They would pick up mail on the fly. And West Amity had a mail crane, and Hackney had a mail crane. But they had the mail contract for a long time. It was a good source of revenue. If there's any postal collectors out there, collect postcards, envelopes with cancellations. I probably have 5, 6, 7, 8 cancellations. It says Washington in Waynesburg. So that the contract was from Washington, PA, so they got their name first. It says Waynesburg RPO, Railway Post Office. Okay. So this is, we're on Hackney Low Trestle and Bridge, looking back at at Hackney. Okay. And this is what's left of that Hackney Low Trestle. There's just these big oak beams sitting down there rotting away that have to be, again, 125, 130, 135 years old. This is what's left of Hackney Bridge. Early on, every bridge was a wooden structure. As the locomotives got heavier and they put a locomotive in the creek because it was too heavy for the bridge, they said, uh-oh, we got to go to steel bridges. Freight was getting heavier. So the biggest percentage of trestles, bridges of this length were converted to I-beam steel stringer bridges. So this is what's left of the Hackney Bridge. And this is just post-abandonment. We got a 60,000-pound boxcar sitting out there waiting to be picked up. Oh, there we go. So there's the close-up of that mail crane. This is another interesting photograph. If you zoom in on it, this must have been some type of excursion, because there are 8 passenger cars on this consist with 2 locomotives up front. So this must have been a Chambers Mill, or they were going to the fair or coming back from the fair. But this is one of the only photographs we have of 8 passenger cars and 2 locomotives in the consist. All right, Conquer Station, out in the middle of nowhere again. We went up there last fall. There's a crew of us. One of my cohorts is in the back there, Zach, my buddy Zach. There's 4 of us. We go out along the line somewhere, and we take the metal detector and our maps and our computers, and we try to find these areas. We actually found the Conger area. Pulled out some pretty good metal from there, too. Swinging the metal detector, it's like beep, 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 spike, beep, 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 spike, spike, spike. I don't know how many spikes we have at home, but we got buckets of spikes. Okay. Okay, coming into the next major station is Dunn Station at milepost 16. This is a fairly good-sized station. Go ahead. Looking back across the Dunn Trestle, bar structure is one of the standard tool sheds. The structure, the structure closest to us, we think that might have been like a section house, but it doesn't show up on any maps or in any of the information as to what that structure actually, what the purpose was. In the latter days, the station was a store, it was the post office, it was a car maintenance area, but Dunn Station had the station proper and had the milk shed on the right-hand side. And the privy down there on the right-hand side. The privy and the milk house are now in Morris Township down in Greene County, south of Prosperity. They moved the milk station and the privy down to their park near their historical center. This is a good photograph of looking over the Dunn Station trestle area. We have a locomotive on the trestle traversing the valley. Between the trestle and the road there, W&W Road as it's called now, there was a ball field. So we have a couple pictures of baseball teams, pickup teams playing in that field underneath the trestle. Here's that field that I was just talking about. Hello. Go back. I'm sorry. Yeah, Dunn Station, milk shed, and the trestle. So the station fell in on itself many, many, many years ago. Okay. Yes, the WW did have the horseshoe curve, just like Big Brother. It was 180 degrees. When did we go up there, Zach? That was last fall when we were in Conger. We got permission from the landowners to walk their property. Their driveway leading to their property is the right-of-way, and it continues, their driveway continues around Horseshoe Curve and up the hill where their horse barns are. So we were actually walking on Horseshoe Curve. Up on the hill, as we approached West Union, Penn Trestle, this was filled in during the standard gauging years. Okay. And now we arrive at the Greene County, Washington County line at West Union. The photographer, the P&LE photographer, is standing on the overhead looking down through the valley to West Union. You can see the water tank in the far distance there. Okay. Speaking of the water tank at milepost 17, this was the only place on the line in the 28 miles where water came from a water tank. If they needed water anywhere else, they could stop and siphon water from a stream into the locomotive. But they had a time where they could get from Washington to Washington to West Union, refill water here, get into Waynesburg, and then in Waynesburg refill the tank, the tender tanks, get to West Union, so on and so forth. But this is the only place on the line where a water tank is present. So looking at West Union itself, that is West Union Trestle that the passenger consist is traveling over. We have a freight platform. In the foreground here is a small shelter station. It's like a telephone booth. But what's neat about this photograph, it shows one of our switch stands. So if you go to the next photo, when the line was being scrapped in 1978, co-author of 3 Feet on the Panhandle, Morgan Gabert, he went out and did some historical preservation, if you know what I mean. So after they were done for the day, Morgan went out and historically preserved a switch stand. So, yeah, after Morgan passed away many years ago, his son Tim called me and said, "Hey, my dad wanted you to have that switch stand." So I stopped one day at the house, picked it up, cleaned it up, and this is an actual W&W switch stand. As far as I know, it's the only one in existence. Okay. And there's that telephone booth, the station peeking out right there on the left-hand side. Okay. Side view, about 1979, a West Union trestle. Once they took the rails off, it lost its integrity and collapsed into the valley. There's nothing left there. Okay, so we're coming down the hill from West Union. If you remember that mainline profile grade, we climbed the hill of West Union. Now we're coming down the hill, Deer Lake into Washington. At the top of the hill, after you cross West Union Trestle, there's a little bridge. It's called Loafman Springs Bridge. If you remember Condit's Crossing, how small it was, well, Loafman Springs is about 10 feet long, and it's about 8 feet high on these stone-cut abutments. So many years ago, we were out right away chasing, and I'm like, oh, there's the trestle up there. So we go up the guy's driveway, and we're out, and he comes out and like, hey, what's going on? We're like, blah, blah, blah. We're following, the railroad, and this is Loafman Spring Trestle. He goes, what railroad? He wasn't from the area. He bought the house because he wanted to live in the country. So I explained the railroad. I said, here's the trestle, and there's a long ledge from here to Deer Lick. That's the right-of-way. He goes, oh, I thought the previous owners cut that into the hill so they could ride their horses up and down the hill. No. Go ahead. That looks really good. This is Sword Station at night. So another early photograph of the Sword Station area. Early 1900s, very early. So after the railroad was done, you can see that it's no longer in its original position. This is another standard tool house. So the farmer goes, once again, hey, what are you going to do with that station? We're going to tear it down, we're going to burn it down. Can I have it? Sure, but you got to move it. No problem. So they pick up the station, turn it 180 degrees, move it up that little hill, and put it on next to the road. That should be the next photograph. So here's Sword Station a couple years ago, very good shape. Again, a rather large station. Attic to the left is a big freight area. To the right is passenger. So yeah, picked it up, turned it, moved it to the top of the hill. So speaking of moving Sword Station, I knew the gentleman that owned the Sword Farm maybe 2 owners ago, and he was selling. So he called me up one day. He goes, "Hey Jim," I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "I'm selling the farm. Does the Historical Society want the station?" I'm like, "What?" He says, "I'll give you the station if you can move it from out in Sword area down to the Historical Society in Waynesburg." I'm like, that's okay. Sell it with the property, but thanks for the offer. I'm thinking, how the heck are we going to move the station over this old country road, 10 miles away? But at least he thought of me. I was grateful of that. So we move into the next station is Sycamore Station, full service at milepost 23. This is the whole Sycamore area right here, okay? So this is Jake Weaver. Jake worked for the railroad. He was a brakeman, he was a conductor, he owned Weaver's store in Sycamore, general store. So the situation here was, you can see that the Sycamore sign is on Jake's store. So he sold tickets out of the store, but the structure next to it, you can see the platform, was the freight station for the W&W. So Mr. and Mrs. Jake Weaver conducted ticketing out of their store, and all the freight was stored in the freight station next to the store. Okay? So you can see the freight station on the right-hand side. There's Jake's store on the left. There's the freight station on the right, and that's Jake tending to his piglets. This is the back of the store with the cupola. That little building to the left is the Mrs. Weaver's wash house. Hello? It's Mrs. Weaver's wash house. Okay? And this is the P&LE photos from the 30s showing the freight station. That's Jake's house right there. So the railroad right away was within feet of his front porch of the house. So we're getting closer to West Waynesburg. We cross another small bridge, Taylor Bridge. Again, it was changed from a wood stringer to steel structure. So very important photograph. Extremely important photograph. So can anybody tell me why this is an extremely important photograph? It's Route 18. What's in the background? Car. So when Route 18 was improved from Waynesburg to Washington, farmers, merchants, people could get in their car or their truck and go at any time to travel. They didn't have to depend on the railroad timetable. So the railroad did carry materials for Route 18, so it pretty much killed itself. So this is an important photograph showing the juxtaposition of the railroad and the highway, Route 18, and what killed the railroad. Okay, coming into Reese's Mill, which is an actual grist mill, another shelter station. There's the grist mill. This is from about 1978, 1979. This has been completely reconfigured by Monongahela Railroad, P&LE, the Succession, Norfolk Southern, so on and so forth. But this whole area has been wiped out by the modern railroad. Okay. Another bridge configuration, Allison Bridge. We're just outside of West Waynesburg now. That bridge is gone. It was reconfigured, torn out, reconfigured for the new railroad to the coal mines. Buchanan Bridge, really unique bridge. You got a low buoy, you got a steel half girder, you got a howl through to cross Browns Creek there. The abutments, the far abutment in the pier in the field is still there, and the abutment on this side is still there. That middle one has been removed, or it was wiped out during floods. So there's the only thing that's left of the bridges are the pier and the abutment. And that's looking across Buchanan Bridge into West Waynesburg. All right, another P&LE photograph. You can see the gentleman standing there on Route 21. This is the end of 3 rail and the end of the yard, Waynesburg yard limit. So the 2 outer rails that Monongahela put in to traverse West Waynesburg. The 2 on that side is narrow gauge. And at the hood on you see on the right hand side is a 1916 Buick truck with a homemade bed on it. It took us a while to figure out what it was because it was never on any equipment roster. We have a couple photographs of it, and finally figured out that they cobbled together this truck to use as a service truck. Okay. Coming into West Waynesburg, we're looking at the tin mill area. This was the Griffiths Tin Mill. It was a shovel factory. It was all kinds of things back in the day. So this was a major source of revenue for the railroad. Go ahead. Go back. I'm sorry. Yeah, the tin mill takes up a lot of area. When the tin mill came in, they generated so much revenue that the WW had to buy more locomotives and more rolling stock just to service this particular tin mill. Okay, go ahead. So now we're into West Waynesburg proper. We're on Route 21, if you're familiar. Sometimes we call it Bucktown, down here in West Waynesburg. This was a standard shelter station again. I got the 3-rail configuration because of the Monongahela Railroad. To the right of the photograph is the tin mill area. Okay. Here's another one of those photographs from my friend's Bryce's collection. Okay, all fine and dandy. We're looking at a nice family photo, 2 nice family photos, but what do you see in the background? On the left-hand photo, to the right, that little white blurb, that's West Waynesburg Station in service. So what are we, 1914 again? 1919? Then on the right-hand side, what do you see in the background? Tracks. So this really, again, illustrates when you're going through your historical photographs, just don't, okay, yeah, look at that nice locomotive in the foreground. Well, look at the background, and you can see something else that's even more important than what's in the foreground. Okay, go ahead. Okay, there was also an Atlantic Richfield storage area that the railroad serviced. They had a couple tank cars that they used for gasoline, kerosene, oils. They even had a tank car used for acid for the tin mill. So they had 3 tank cars on the line. Okay. This is a Monongahela Railroad picture of the tin mill. You can see all the 3-rail. This is in, what's that, 1933 down lower. Yeah, this is from 1933. The tin mill is pretty much done. They just use it for storage. Go ahead. Overview of the tin mill from the hill behind it. Pretty big sprawling area. Okay. Again. Go ahead. This is the back of the tin mill. There was a siding around the back that went through the far side of the building. All right, so we left the tin mill area. We got a lone locomotive probably coming back to the Waynesburg yard, probably delivered something to the tin mill and coming back to be serviced. So we're on Route 21 West, coming out of Waynesburg. That's the highway on the right, and the right of way comes up along Route 21. All right, this is the first, that is Waynesburg water station pumping house, probably 1890s-ish. The structure to the right is the first engine house. If you remember at the beginning of the presentation, when the railroad first came into Waynesburg, this is where it stopped, in West Waynesburg. They didn't have the lots down on South Waynesburg on the south side to build the yard and the big brick station. This is where the railroad ended in the early days. So this is showing a flood. That white blob back on the right is the first engine house. There's a box car that they put to ground probably for storage here, and the right of way goes along the flooded creek. Okay. All right, so we're in section 1. The structure on the right is the first engine house. The structure on the left is another one of those Pensy tool sheds, and that is Bridge 0. First bridge coming out of Waynesburg, that's engine house Bridge 0. Obviously, first engine house means it was the first one. After they built the big roundhouse in Waynesburg Yard, this turned into a car repair shop. They would repair cars, paint cars, car storage. This became a repair facility in West Waynesburg. Looking from the other end, again, this is a P&LE photo. Okay. All right, we're looking at one of the longest tangents of straight track on the Waynesburg and Washington Railroad. If you remember from one of the first slides, there were 174 curves. Couldn't go anywhere without hitting a curve. This is between the first engine house and powerhouse curve coming into West Waynesburg. It's one of the longest, straightest pieces of track on the railroad. Some of it still, there's a couple hundred feet there somewhere. Okay? So we're coming into powerhouse curve. We're going to go around the curve and come into Waynesburg Yard proper. The reason it was called Powerhouse Curve is because on the right was Waynesburg Powerhouse. The railroad was there first, and then the powerhouse was built on this funky angle to accommodate Powerhouse Curve, the curve in the railroad. Okay, now we're looking into Waynesburg Yard. The powerhouse is on the left-hand side. We're looking directly into Waynesburg Yard. The house on the right was the section man's house, where they could stay overnight, during the day, take breaks, so on and so forth. As you can see in the lower left-hand corner, this is from 1930. The Monongahela Railroad had already come into West Waynesburg, and they three-tracked everything to get their standard gauge equipment through the yard and out to the tin mill. So this is Waynesburg Yard. Main line is right up the middle. On the left side, the left-hand track is to the scales. To the right hand is we're going over the ash pit, to the roundhouse, the turntable, the water column, and all of those small buildings to the right. Okay. So in this photograph, showing the ash pit directly in front of us, the sand house was to the right. That's a water column where they would water the locomotives. Right directly in the middle of the photograph is the turntable. To the right is the lumber shed. To the left is an open storage building. Okay. All right, this is about 1906. The photographer has his back to the roundhouse, looking out over the yard towards the station. That was a bridge. It was bridge girders from McDonald, I do believe, that they transported down to Waynesburg and reconfigured it into a turntable. This is what's called an Armstrong turntable. It was not powered. It was balanced perfectly that there would be long jib poles on either side, and men could push on the jib poles and turn a 42-ton locomotive. That's how balanced this turntable was in that pit. So again, we're looking at the lumber shed, looking at open storage. Between those two structures is the water tank for Waynesburg Yard. As you can see, the Monongahela Railroad just came through, and they didn't even ballast the track yet. We just have brand new ties and new rails on those ties. What's wrong with this water tank? No, something's missing. Yeah, no spout. Remember the water column I showed you 2 slides ago? The water tank was only to hold the water. The water was gravity fed from this water tank through the pipe up to that water column. They would pump water out of the creek behind, use the water tank as a storage tank, and then water feed it to the locomotives of the water column. So that you would put the sand house was there, get your sand for traction. Your water was there, so they water there, and then the ash pit dropped the ashes. So everything was done in one area instead of moving up into the yard to get your water. Okay? So this was Waynesburg Roundhouse post-abandonment. The sand house is to the right. We had a 6-stall engine house. Stall 6 on the far left was the machine shop. So you have five stalls for locomotive storage, and on the left-hand side, stall 6, they had a machine shop, lathes, drill presses, anything to work on locomotives. That little building to the left of the roundhouse was a scrap iron shed. Okay. Up close to post-abandonment, showing the 6 stalls of the engine house. So this is a pretty neat photograph. This is the back of the engine house. So in the early 1900s, Waynesburg paved their roads, the streets in Waynesburg. So they quarried the rock from Duval's Hill behind the roundhouse across the creek up on Duval's Hill. This is a pretty early photograph because the roundhouse is in almost pristine condition. But you can see that it was built slightly on a hill, had a little foundation there, but it gives you a good look of how many windows were in the roundhouse to permit as much light to come in to perform their work. This is a great photograph. So if you're down in Waynesburg, between Rich Hill Street, you come down Rich Hill Street is the beginning of the yard, and Washington Street, from First Avenue to the creek. There's 6 lots there. One of the directors, Buchanan, J.A.J. Buchanan, he sold to W&W the 6 lots in South Waynesburg to move the station and the facilities from West Waynesburg to what we have here. So the yard, all of this is jammed into those 6 lots in that rectangle. This was taken from the attic of the house across the street. So you have the station on the right, the roundhouse in the back, supervisor shed in the middle, water tank. There's all kinds of storage facilities within Waynesburg Yard, but they're just jam-packed with equipment. Okay? So this is Waynesburg Station to the right, freight platform. The dark building directly across First Avenue is the Carnegie Gas building. The railroad would lease various buildings to other manufacturers and for storage and whatnot. So that was the Carnegie Gas building. Okay. Stock pens on the far side, the north side of First Avenue, was a 3-corral stock pen. So they had stock cars to bring in, horses, cows, sheep. As you well know, Green Washington County was really big on livestock, especially in Greene County. There was more sheep than people in Greene County at one time. So this was a very busy area, the stock pens. Early photograph from Washington, end of Washington Street at the bottom, probably about 1906. Passenger consist has just come in. If you look closely at the photograph, there's some businessmen coming up the sidewalk. The venerable Waynesburg Milling was one of the early flour mills, biggest flowering mills in Waynesburg. Got a couple boxcars spotted there, leaving off grain and taking on finished flour sacks. Okay. So this is Waynesburg Milling at the corner of Washington Street, coming down the hill at First Avenue. This building burned down 20-some years ago. They put up one of those new steel structures, but we just got some photographs about a month ago from the prior owners, the Blair family, Little Waynesburg Milling. We were kind of conducting some research. Got some new photographs of this great looking building. And the First Avenue siding was between that automobile and Waynesburg Milling. It went up the entire length of First Street, serving farm implement, merchandiser. There was a lumber company on that siding, so there were a couple small businesses that the railroad served. Okay. Another business they served was Honester Brothers. They were located in Washington and Waynesburg. They were an oil and gas well supply company. So that was their building right there at the corner of First and Washington. Nice looking 40,000 pound boxcar there on the right, WW boxcar. Okay. This is the end of the yard. If you could read the sign on the back, it said Joseph Spriggs and Company. He owned that warehouse, did a lot of storage there. You can see that there was a ramp. Can unload equipment from flat cars, down off the flat car onto the ramp. Okay. So now let's take a look at Waynesburg Station. We're at milepost 28. We're at the end of the line. The Greene County terminus is Waynesburg Station. Went through many configurations as the railroad grew. If you remember, we were out in West Waynesburg. They had a small wood structure there. When they moved to the South Waynesburg proper, they built this nice brick station with this train shed covering the passenger cars, so the passengers could get out, embark and disembark out of the weather. Go ahead. So this shows another configuration of Waynesburg Station. As the railroad grew, more freight, they went from 3 freight bays on the west side to 6. What we're seeing here is a piece of gas pumping equipment that the railroad, they had a special flat car built, heavy-duty flat car, to bring in this piece of gas equipment to take down to Brave, PA. So they unloaded this piece of equipment onto a wagon, and there's like 18, 20 mules and horses that pulled this piece of equipment from Waynesburg down to Brave. Okay. And again, as the railroad grew, so did the buildings. So the supervisors were out in a small building in the middle of the yard. So they added the second story to the station in 1902. That's why you see two different colored bricks. And that's how you can date photographs. If you see Waynesburg Station with the second story, then you know it's after 1902. If it's first story, it's before, before 1902. Last day of passenger service, just a brief story there. They went from 4 cars to 2 cars because they were losing passenger revenue. When everybody found out that the railroad was going to run on July 9th, 1920 day, they had to put more cars on the train to accommodate everybody to ride. So that's a whole different present. I got just an entire presentation of the last day of passenger service and how that day transpired, but it's rather ironic that they were losing revenue because they didn't have any riders, then on the last day everybody wanted to ride. So we're at the end of the line there at Washington, or Waynesburg. And where the Monongahela comes in, on Cumberland Street there, 3-rail Monongahela on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, and the end of 3-rail is right there at Cumberland Street. And we are at the caboose, which means we're at the end. So thank you very much. Enjoyed doing these presentations. Love doing this. I could talk about the railroad all day and all night. But thank you for your attention. And any questions? Yes.
Does the Urban Main Line primary parallel Route 18?
Yes. Pretty much. Go from Pancake, W&W Road actually, down through Van Kirk. Do you know where the Liberty Methodist Church is? Okay. Yeah, and it comes down through W&W Road 18 out to West Waynesburg. Yep.